Trout knew how ridiculous he looked. He expected to be received abominably, dreamed of embarrassing the festival to death. He wanted to be treated like a cockroach.
Are you a writer?
Yes.
Oh, I'm afraid I don't read as much as I ought to.
Well, we're all afraid of something. Cancer, rats, Doberman pinchers.
I should know, but I don't, so I gotta ask you. What is the most famous thing that you ever wrote?
It's about the funeral of a great French chef. Yeah, all the great chefs of the world were there. It was a beautiful ceremony. Before they closed the casket, they sprinkled parsley and paprika on it.
Oh, it sounds interesting.
Kilgore Trout assumed that the arts festival would still take place that night. He had no money for any form of transportation, so he set out on foot. He began the 5-mile walk down Fairchild Boulevard toward a tiny amber dot at the other end. The dot was the Midland City Center for the Arts. He would make it grow by walking toward it. When his walking had made it big enough, it would swallow him up. There would be food inside. Trout was greeted with luminous adoration. Mr. Trout, they said in rapture. No longer will Midland City be known merely as the home of Mary Alice Miller, the women's 200-meter breaststroke champion of the world. It will also be the city which first acknowledged the greatness of Kilgore Trout. We've tried to survive so long on money and sex and envy and real estate and automobiles and television and alcohol. We are so ready for a renaissance, Mr. Trout. You will be our Leonardo. I had come to the Arts Festival incognito. I was not eager to be recognized. I had bought a pair of sunglasses at a Holiday Inn outside of Ashtabula, Ohio, where I spent the night before. The lenses were silvered, were mirrors to anyone looking my way. Where other people in the cocktail lounge had eyes, I had 2 holes into another universe. I had leaks. I was on a par with the creator of the universe there in the dark in the cocktail lounge. I shrunk the universe to a ball exactly 1 light year in diameter. I had it explode. I had it disperse itself again. The waitress brought me another drink.
Can you see anything in the dark in those glasses?
The big show is inside my head, I said.
Oh.
She said. I can tell fortunes, I said. You want your fortune told?
Not really.
She said. She went back to the bar, and she and the bartender had some sort of conversation about me, I think. The bartender took several anxious looks in my direction. I did not worry about his asking me to leave the establishment. I had created him, after all. Trout was feeling spooky. All he could see of me was a reflection of candle flames in my mirrored glasses, in my leaks. The thing was, Trout was the only character I ever created who had enough imagination to suspect that he might be the creation of another human being. He had spoken of this possibility several times to his parakeet. He had said, for instance,
Honest to God, Bill, all I can think is, I'm somebody in a book by somebody who wants to write about somebody who suffers all the time.
Here in Chicago, according to the Office of Intellectual Freedom of the American Library Association, whereas in the early 1970s, complaints about book banning averaged about 100 per year, in 1981, those same complaints of attempted or actual book banning or book censorship were 1,000 a year. I suppose if you needed one example for the tragic absurdity of censorship, it would be to tell you that on that list of most censored authors is the work of Kurt Vonnegut, Jr. In recognition of his dedication to the preservation of free access to ideas and information, it is with great pleasure that I present this to Kurt Vonnegut, Jr.
I think I'm trying to clear my head of all the junk in there. The assholes, the flags, the underpants. I'm throwing out characters from my other books, too. I'm not going to put on any more puppet shows. I think I'm trying to make my head as empty as it was when I was born onto this damaged planet 50 years ago. I was waiting to intercept Kilgore Trout about 6 blocks away. I sat in a Plymouth automobile I had rented from Avis with my Diners Club card. I had a paper tube in my mouth. It was stuffed with leaves. I set it on fire. It was a soigné thing to do. Trout was cantering when I came alongside. I clocked him at 11 miles an hour, which was excellent for a man his age. Whoa, Mr. Trout. Whoa. Whoa, Mr. Trout. Mr. Trout, I said from the unlighted interior of the car, you have nothing to fear. I bring you tidings of great joy. He was slow to get his breath back, so he wasn't much of a conversationalist at first.
Are you from the Arts Festival?
He said. His eyes rolled and rolled. I'm from the Everything Festival, I replied.
Huh?
He said. Mr. Trout, I said, I am a novelist, and I created you for use in my books.
Do you have a gun?
He said, I don't need a gun to control you, Mr. Trout. All I have to do is write down something about you, and that's it. I am going to set at liberty all the literary characters who have served me so loyally during my writing career. Arise, Mr. Trout. You are free. You are free. I might have shaken his hand, but his right hand was injured, so our hands remained dangling at our sides. Bon voyage, I said. I disappeared. I somersaulted lazily and pleasantly through the void, which is my hiding place when I dematerialize. Trout's cries to me faded as the distance between us increased. His voice was my father's voice. I heard my father, and I saw my mother in the void. Here was what Kilgore Trout cried out to me in my father's voice.
Make me young. Make me young. Make me young.